welding sparks, red-hot slag, torch flames, grinding sparks, portable heaters. Add a fuel source and oxygen to create a chemical reaction, and you've got fire. These are just some ignition sources. All of them, and more, are common in mechanical construction.
Preventing fires comes down to keeping ignition and fuel sources away from each other. It's not as easy as it sounds when you think about all the different jobs going on at any given time, the work of other trades, job site conditions that are always changing. It's no surprise that fire is a major safety concern. Despite our best efforts, job site fires do happen. Even a small fire on the job site can become a huge problem. Fires can happen fast and the results can be extreme. Preventing job site fires starts with you. Here's what you need to know.
We'll start by taking a look at the health effects you could suffer from being exposed to a fire. Then we'll talk about what you can do to prevent a fire. We'll take a look at the most common causes of job site fires in our industry. And finally, we'll look at what to do in case a job site fire does start. Flames can, of course, cause burns, but they may not be the worst hazard when it comes to fire. As a matter of fact, the #1 cause of fire-related death is smoke inhalation. Why is smoke so dangerous? When you breathe in smoke, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. Breathe in too much smoke, and you'll suffocate rather quickly. Smoke can also contain toxins, leaving behind particles that damage tissues in the lungs. Also, when hot smoke is inhaled, it can burn the tissue in your mouth, nose, and upper respiratory system.
While smoke can burn tissue on the inside, flames can burn tissue on the outside. There are 3 types of burns. The severity of a burn depends on the damage to one of your 3 layers of skin.
First-degree burns are the least severe. A first-degree burn only affects the outer, or first, layer of skin. They often heal in several days and usually don't leave permanent scars. Second-degree burns go down to the second layer of skin. They're harder to treat and can leave permanent scars. Third-degree burns are the most severe. They destroy all 3 layers of skin and can require extensive medical attention, including skin grafts and hospitalization.
All of us know how painful a small burn can be, like sunburn, or the one you get cooking or grilling. Second and third degree burns can be extremely painful and result in infection and long recovery periods, with a lot of financial costs and family suffering thrown in for good measure.
Obviously, the heat and smoke a fire produces are hazardous to your health and can cause significant property damage.
In simplest terms, prevention is about keeping fuel and ignition sources away from each other. Fires are broken down into classes based on their fuel source. There are 3 classes we're most concerned about on construction sites.
Class A fires involve common combustible materials like wood, paper, and cardboard. Class B fires involve flammable liquids and gases like gasoline, propane, grease, and oil. Class C fires involve live electrical equipment like power tools, circuit breakers, and outlets. That's 3 classes of fire involving 3 distinct fuel sources that we see all over a typical job site. Keep these fuel sources in mind as we look at some of the most common causes of fires in mechanical construction. Sparks from hot work, power tools shorting out, overloading temporary electrical panels, mishandling flammable liquids, improper treatment of compressed gas cylinders, and the work of other trades. These are just some of the most common causes of fires in mechanical construction.
Think about the fuel source and the ignition source for each cause. How can they be kept from coming into contact with each other? Let's start with hot work.
welding, cutting, brazing, hot work generates a lot of sparks and flames, a lot of heat. It's no surprise that sparks from hot work and combustible debris are not a good combination.
When you perform hot work, fire prevention starts with good housekeeping. Keep your work area clean and free of combustible materials.
This includes debris like wood scraps, paper, and cardboard boxes, and oily, greasy, or paint-soaked rags. These need to be disposed of in metal containers with self-closing lids. Be aware of your surroundings, especially if you're working on an upper level near a leading edge. Check the level below to make sure there's no combustible material underneath for sparks and slag to rain down on. Isolate ignition sources where you can. For example, you could use a welding screen or a fire blanket to keep sparks contained. Or set up ignition sources away from combustible materials and other fuel sources. Finally, make a fire watch part of the daily hot work routine. Finish up 30 minutes before the end of your shift and make sure someone is watching for smoldering material for that remaining half hour. It's a good way to prevent a fire. This pipe cutter shorted out because there was a problem with the cord. Any debris in the area is a fuel source that will cause this fire to spread. So again, housekeeping is the first line of defense. Inspecting a power tool before use is your best protection against a short or dangerous malfunction.
Pay special attention to the area where the power cord connects into the tool. A lot of times, tools are lifted or carried by their cord. That's just asking for trouble. Wires can get loose and touch other wires or other conductive components in the tool, causing a short.
Also, look for areas where the insulation is damaged, such as cuts, scrapes, and burns, and take defective tools out of service immediately. When it comes to the power tools you work with on the job, use only commercial-grade tools. Power tools designed for non-commercial use are not built to hold up on the job site. They can overheat and become potential fire hazards. Temporary electrical panels are necessary on many job sites, but they're often called upon to draw more current than they're capable of safely providing. Be aware of what type of power demands you're putting on temporary electrical panels. If the panel is overloaded and draws too much current, it will overheat and could melt components and possibly result in fire. Make sure the panels are assembled by a qualified electrician and never overload them. Don't push your luck with flammable liquids. The name says it all. They're flammable. If they're exposed to an ignition source, they'll easily ignite, quickly and violently.
Using a container like this for a flammable liquid like gasoline? This doesn't cut it on the job site. Much too vulnerable. Keep flammable liquids and solvents in approved, properly labeled containers with self-closing lids.
Just like when you're performing hot work, be aware of your surroundings. When you're using flammable liquids, you need to be at least 50 feet away from ignition sources like sparks and flames. Store all flammable liquids in approved storage cabinets, designed specifically for flammable or combustible liquid storage. This is a pretty tame example of what can happen when a very significant fuel source like compressed gas is ignited.
The gas stored in these cylinders is under extreme pressure. Improper handling of one of these can result in extreme danger, like an uncontrollable blowtorch.
Protect yourself and others from fire or explosion by keeping compressed gas cylinders secured in an upright position at all times. Pay attention to your surroundings. Keep cylinders away from ignition sources like sparks, hot slag, and flames. Make sure cylinder valve wrenches are in place while the valves are open so they can be shut off quickly if necessary. Close cylinder valves as soon as you're done working with them. Valve caps must be in place before moving or storing cylinders. Store compressed gas cylinders in a dry, well-ventilated area at least 20 feet from combustible materials, and make sure oxygen cylinders are stored at least 20 feet from fuel gas cylinders, unless there's a non-combustible barrier between them that's at least 5 feet high with a fire resistance rating of at least 1/2 hour. You're not alone on a job site. Other trades are always moving in and out and might be working right alongside you. You could both be working safely and following all the rules, but if one of your jobs creates a fuel or ignition source that is hazardous to the other, then the risk of fire increases.
It's like defensive driving. You not only have to take responsibility for yourself and your actions, but also keep an eye on what others are doing, especially someone who isn't working as safely as you.
If you smoke, be very careful. Watch for no smoking signs and smoke only in designated smoking areas. When it's cold out, be careful where portable heaters are placed. Keep heaters away from fuel sources. If a heater gets knocked over by wind or work activity, you don't want it coming in contact with anything that can burn.
We've just looked at some of the most common causes of fires in the mechanical trades. Our goal is to prevent all fires, but what if one does start, in spite of our best safety efforts? You need to know what to do and how to assess the situation quickly. You don't have much time.
First, alert everyone in the area that there's a fire.
Fire!
And make sure the fire department is responding.
After the alert, quickly determine whether the fire is one you can safely fight or not. If the fire is small, manageable, and you have a way out if it gets out of hand, you can fight that fire. If it's a large fire, or if by fighting it you can't leave yourself a certain way out, get out now. The bottom line, if you're unsure, evacuate the area and seek assistance from the fire department in accordance with the job site plan. There are times when your quick action will be needed. Here's how to safely fight a manageable fire.
Remember the 3 types of fires, Class A, B, and C? While there are specific classes of fire extinguishers designed for a certain type or types of fire, most job sites will have Class A, B, C fire extinguishers on hand. These work on all 3 types of fire.
Make sure you become familiar with the type or types of fire extinguishers that are available long before you might need them.
Fully charged and properly inspected fire extinguishers need to be easy to locate and readily accessible. Class ABC fire extinguishers should be located in specific locations on site as required. Know where the closest extinguishers are in your work area. If you're performing any kind of hot work, you need to have your own fire extinguisher close at hand.
Approach every fire very carefully. Make sure you have a safe evacuation route behind you. Never turn your back to a fire, and don't let fire, heat, or smoke come between you and your evacuation route. If conditions change, be ready to evacuate quickly.
Here's how to effectively use a fire extinguisher. When you're about 8 feet away from the fire, think pass. Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, sweep the nozzle from side to side at the base of the fire until it's out. You need to get in low at the base, otherwise the extinguisher will not be able to do its job. PASS. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep at the base of the fire.
Anytime the pin is pulled on a fire extinguisher, report it to your supervisor. No matter how little or how much was used, the fire extinguisher needs to be taken out of service until it's refilled and inspected.
Fire. We all know how dangerous and destructive it can be. The risk factors go up on a mechanical construction job site because of the type of work we perform. Fortunately, there are things you can do to minimize or eliminate the hazard. Think about the 3 ingredients that make fire. Oxygen is everywhere, so how can you keep fuel sources from coming in contact with ignition sources on the site? When it comes to your health, burns are an obvious threat, but don't take smoke for granted. It's often more hazardous than the flames. Keep the most common hazards in mind and reduce the risk when you work. Always be aware of your surroundings when performing hot work. Inspect power tools before use and use the right professional grade tool for the job. Don't overload temporary electrical panels. Keep flammable liquids in approved containers and store them in the proper location. Handle compressed gas cylinders correctly. Be aware of the work other trades are performing and how you affect each other. And always maintain good housekeeping. Don't let combustible debris build up. Know when a fire is one you can fight safely. Use the PASS technique with the right type of fire extinguisher.
We work in an environment where the risk of a fire is always something you need to be aware of. Take the time to make sure you're not putting yourself or anyone else at risk. Preventing fires is everyone's responsibility on the job site, but it starts with you.